In the past week, we have had so many rebels covering so many big stories, and my barometer for how big our stories are is if we get invited to the largest cable news show in America, namely Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News. And I mentioned that because I know we've hit a big story hard. If Tucker's team calls in from New York and says, "Hey, can we talk to one of those rebels?" Now, we've had Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies, two of our longest serving rebels, appear on Fox in the last week. But we also had our two newest rebels on Tucker's show, Jeremy Lafredo with his Russian reports, and our next guest, Katie Daviscourt, one of our newest rebels, based in Seattle, Washington. Well, she is actually down in El Paso, Texas. What's she doing down there? Well, she is covering what can only be called an invasion. Hundreds of thousands of people pouring across an unguarded border. And you can see her reports at rebelborderreports.com. Katie Daviscourt joins us now via Skype. Katie, great to see you. I'm glad you're staying safe because it really is a kind of lawlessness there, isn't it? It's almost like a battlefield of sorts.
Oh, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sorry, it's so windy. So I'm in El Paso, and across is Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, which is actually the murder capital of the entire world. So it is a lawless, there's an invasion happening right now in the United States, and President Biden, the lefty mayors seem to be doing absolutely nothing about it.
Well, let's put some numbers to that, because in Canada, we have an open border called Roxham Road, and every day dozens of people come over. But at that border there near El Paso, it's not dozens, it's hundreds, maybe even thousands a day. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. So thousands line up daily. A few hundred have been actually entering into the U.S. daily, but more than 80,000 illegal immigrants have been released into the city of El Paso since late August. So that is just a little bit over 3.5 months. 80,000. And the facilities are at max capacity. So they're just all over the streets of downtown sleeping.
That's crazy. I mean, the footage that I think got you the invite on Tucker Carlson's show was just when you arrived in El Paso. You were just coming in from Seattle to El Paso to do the story. You landed at the airport. And before you went looking for the story came looking for you. Hundreds and hundreds of people just lying on the floor. These were not travelers. Like, I've seen people sleep in airports because their flights are canceled because of the snow. That's happening right now. Mm-hmm. These were not travelers. They were pedestrians who came across the border, had to sleep somewhere, and they just shoveled them into the airport.
Yeah. Yeah, so the holding centers are at full capacity, and the airport has turned into a makeshift holding center. And so I decided to go around and I asked people where they're from. They said Colombia, Peru, Dominican Republic. And one of them had the audacity to say to me, "Who gave you permission to film us?" And I said, "Who gave you permission to enter into the United States illegally, which is a crime?"
Yeah. You know what? They're learning chutzpah right away. They're learning, audacity right away. I guess they know how to operate in the United States. Now, you're in El Paso, which is in the Texas side, but you cross over and you sort of in this wilderness area. Is that how you would describe it? And why don't you introduce this next clip of you discovering children? And that's the part that breaks my heart, because these children are being used. Sometimes, I hate to say it, they're being trafficked sexually, especially young women. The number of young women who are raped along the journey to get over the border is shocking. There's all sorts of abuse. The children are used as pawns because the traffickers, who are called coyotes, think, well, you have a kid, you're going to have special treatment when you're arrested. Tell us, set up this next video clip and then throw to the clip. Why don't you tell us what you saw, and then we'll play the clip, Katie.
Yeah, so I was driving down the highway of El Paso, and along to the right is the U.S. southern border. And I noticed a group of illegal immigrant children waiting on the side of the border. So I got out and I started asking them, where they're from. So they had just illegally entered into a very accessible. So the United States border, it is not secure. And anyone can easily enter into this one part where they have removed a crate on the border side. And so they just easily walk along this wall and then enter through a hole, and boom, you're into the United States. So I ran into a group of children. There are about 6 of them. But what a lot of people don't know, and what you mentioned earlier, is that only 30% of the immigrant children coming into the United States are with their birth parents or biological families. 70% are actually being trafficked and go missing. They're unaccounted for once they enter into the United States. So this is just a true definition of a humanitarian crisis. This should be the biggest story in America right now, and mainstream media refuses to cover it except Fox News.
Yeah, Fox News and, of course, Rebel News. And we're so proud of
Yep.
what you're doing here. Let's look at that clip right now.
¿Dónde son?
Hey, you need to go back, man. Just step back. Please. Try it properly. Step back.
¿Dónde son?
Get back. Get back.
These kids and these adults, men, women, children, people of all ages, they get across the border, and then it seems to me that they're not really trying to be evasive, because when they're picked up, it's not like they're driven to the border and booted out. At least, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just like Roxham Road here in Canada. In fact, the crazy thing at Roxham Road is that the Mounties, the police, are luggage boys. They will literally help illegal border crossers carry their luggage if it's heavy. It's just so humiliating for the Mounties, who have a great history of upholding the law. Is it the same there in the States, that once they're across, they know they're not going to be booted out, and so they want to be found because they want to get food, clothing, shelter, medicine? Is that an accurate statement?
Very accurate. They actually wait for Border Patrol to come get them, because to them, once the Border Patrol gets them, they are granted safety and pretty much asylum. So the United States government and just other NGOs, nonprofit organizations, bring them food, new clothing, provide them blankets, and they are treated actually better than the normal homeless person that you'd see on the streets. But something to mention is I am specifically here because Title 42 was going to expire, except it was recently blocked by SCOTUS. The Biden administration wants to expire it, which means that anyone that comes into the United States will get pretty much be granted amnesty. And so the city of El Paso ended up declaring a state of emergency ahead of right before it was halted. And they actually deployed the Texas National Guard on the border, on the El Paso side of the border, looking into Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. And that did prevent a lot of the illegal immigrants from lining up. But what the Texas National Guard did was they actually directed the illegal immigrants to go down 1 mile and have Border Patrol pick them up, which they did, and then illegally brought them into the United States. And it's just a matter of time, probably a few days, before they're just released into El Paso.
Huh. You know, you said up to 80,000 of these migrants are in El Paso. I just Googled it, and El Paso has about 700,000 people. So it's a fair-sized city, but more than 10% of the souls in that city right now are migrants. I don't know how that can even work. Like just shelter, bathrooms, medicine.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no school. Like, that's just such a shocking number. I remember a few months ago when Ron DeSantis flew some border crossers to, I think it was Martha's Vineyard, or some really fancy schmancy East Coast liberal elite tourist hideaway, like it maybe 100. And the whole Martha's Vineyard went into panic mode, and they bust them out, and they gave them like a bowl of soup and then kicked them out. How dare you come to our tourist haven? It's shock, 80,000 in a city of 700,000. I can't believe other journalists are not there. I mean, that's one of the things that Tucker said to you, is you're seeing stunning things. It's not like you literally just stepped off the plane. You didn't have to go hunting for it. The story came to you. I can't believe that's not front page news in every newspaper across America.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, just my time being here, I've only been here for a few days, and I've just had stories fall into my lap left and right. I mean, I'm headed home tonight, but I'm right before I leave, I'm going to go check out this spot where state troopers are actually stopping semi trucks. They have about a 5-mile line, and they're checking for human trafficking. So I'm going to go set up and see what I can find before that. But why isn't that even on the news?
Yeah, well,
They're
that's
just
just
not.
yeah.
Yeah, they're just not covering it.
It's terrifying. And by the way, some of those semis can be death traps, obviously. That's not a
Yeah.
way for humans to travel like cattle or cargo. But that's how desperate these folks are. And they've been given that hope by the Democrats, just come across, everything will be fine. And on the one hand, you got to admire the determination of people who want to come to America, but this is a lawless way. It's a dangerous way. It's a disorderly way. It disrespects those who came in the country legally and properly. It's not sustainable. And I believe the Democrats are doing it for one reason only. They believe that these people will become Democratic clients. Either they'll eventually be Democratic Party voters, or they'll be part of the Democratic, welfare state or whatever. I think that it is purely political, and it's just shocking, the actual numbers. Now, Katie, we're so proud of the work you've been doing there. We've set up a special compilation page. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's rebelborderreports.com. Is that right?
Yep, rebelborderreports.com. You guys can go there and help donate to offset our travel costs, because it's so important that independent media is here on the ground showing you guys what the mainstream won't show you.
That's an excerpt from my show every night. It's called The Ezra Levant Show. That's me, Ezra Levant. You can see the whole thing behind our paywall. Well, there's a lot of goodies behind there. I do a show every weeknight. My friends Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies and Nat and Kat have their shows too. You get a ton of content for just $8 a month. There's so much in there you won't find anywhere else. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.